In recent times, we've seen waterlogging, flooding, unprecedented across our cities. Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Chennai, each of our major cities in recent times has given us a sinking feeling. From storms to heavy rains, city infrastructure being found wanting on many an occasion. Add to this the threat of more and more extreme weather events that we are witnessing at the moment. The question arises, how do we make our cities weatherproof? Let's carry forward our roundtable now and talk to experts. Jaya Dindo is Executive Program Director, Sustainable Cities and Director, WRI India Ross Centre. Kedarnath Rao Ghorpade is former Chief Planner, the Mumbai Metropolitan Region Development Authority. Vivek Menon is Urban Planner, and Dikshu Kukreja is an Urban and Environmental Planner. I want first each of you to respond to what you've seen happen in Delhi today. Is it typical of what's happening across our cities, or is it exceptional because of the complete collapse of drainage systems? Jaya Dindo, why don't you start first?
Sure, thanks, Rajdeep. So I think we are in a situation now where the law of probabilities does not apply, right? So what we are seeing in Delhi today, we saw in Bangalore about a few months ago. We've seen it in Mumbai year after year. So no city is spared. And to be honest, India as a country is the seventh most vulnerable to climate change and its compounding impact. 80% of our urban population lives in districts which are climate hazard prone. So this is going to keep happening. It's going to keep getting worse and more frequent, unfortunately.
Okay, let me bring in Kedarnath Rao Ghorpade, because you're from my city of Mumbai. Mumbai, we've seen in every year during the monsoon, at least a couple of days when the city still struggles to deal with rain. The Mumbai Municipal Corporation claims they've got their drainage better today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Do you go along with that, or do you believe cities like Mumbai, wherein we've seen many of the traditional sources being covered with construction and therefore drainage also struggling to reach the usual sources of water flow? How do you see Mumbai's position?
Okay, namaskar. I think reference to Mumbai, I think nearly 4+ decades I have been here, and from day one, wherever I have stayed, I have trudged through the streets during the monsoons, and I make it a point that if possible, do trudge through. Even in 2005, I think from Bandra to Vashi, I have walked through and enjoyed and learned a lot of it. And I was also interviewed by the Times of India. One thing is, I think what really one has to accept in case of Mumbai specific, it's kind of a saucer. And we are reclaiming the land, and we need to be very clear that if flooding happens in one area, it is likely that you reclaim some part, it will go on to the other one. Let's take the case of, say, Dahisar in North Mumbai, Western Mumbai. They have been showing this, I would say, moving flooding zones. And that's what I have observed in the last couple of years in Mumbai specifically. I think the new trend which is emerging in the urban planning sector is we need to have nature-based kind of a solution, or a science-based solution wherein we consider the natural features to a great extent, and also look at that how do we take water as one of the primary concerns in the planning of cities. And there is a new trend again emerging as water-sensitive cities. I myself was involved in one of the assignments, and where we came out that instead of hard surfaces, we should have soft surfaces. That is a new trend. Soft surface in sense wherein
I'm going to just stop
soil
you.
is able to absorb.
I'm just going to stop you for a moment. I'll come back to Mumbai, because the visuals we are showing you are of Delhi. And Delhi is what has really prompted us to look at our sinking cities. Dikshu Kukreja, you come from here. Look at those parts of Delhi. Lutyens Delhi, heart of Delhi, every corner today was flooded out. Has it got worse, you believe, over time because of drainage, because of rampant construction, because of tree felling? All kinds of reasons are being offered as to why Delhi is even more vulnerable to this kind of heavy rainfall. What do you think explains what happened in Delhi today?
Well, add the most basic of reasons, Rajdeep, to your list. I would say it is completely a human arrogance, particularly of our local authorities, municipalities, and those who govern these cities, that, we are talking about, or we've been talking for a long time now, about world-class cities. And are these disturbing, disappointing images on your screen anything of a world-class city? So I think the first and foremost is, what is our attitude towards the city? We can keep finding lots of excuses for it. We can also attribute today now to the buzzword of climate change. But this has been a horrific image year after year. I mean, in fact, it makes me even turn nostalgic for a moment when I look at the Minto Bridge image on your screen, which I've been watching for the last 40 years the same way. Why don't we just now convert it into a Minto Lake rather than a Minto Bridge? We need to understand here that, the fundamentals of a city which is growing in a developing nation, you're obviously going to have urban migration. You're obviously going to keep continuing to have more development. But that doesn't mean that today, with technology, with artificial intelligence and what have you, we cannot plan these things. Then there is the fundamental aspect, which is one of the fundamental reasons of these images, is also the desilting of drains we talk about year after year. When those drains have been designed to a certain capacity, maybe today the flood rains, the flash rains, do not cater to those drains. But as it is, the drains are now half filled with just silt and garbage, so their capacity is anyway less than what it should be. So there are so many such fundamental aspects which really don't require rocket science, which really do not require major investments. So we can keep building world-class infrastructure. I'm seeing images of the airport as well on your screen. We can keep building this world-class infrastructure, but are we really equipped from an attitude point of view to maintain this infrastructure? So these fundamental flaws need to be fixed, in my opinion.
We'll come to specific solutions from each of you, but Vivek Menon, there are those who, the government of the day, particularly in the last 10 years, has spoken a lot about smart cities. Sanctioned projects in smart cities, number is 8,013, cost 1,64,000 crores being spent on smart cities. When I look at what is happening around me, I wonder whether even if the national capital is sinking, what happens to these other smart cities? Completed projects number is 7,167, cost 1,43,000 crores. Ongoing projects number 846, cost again 20,200 crores. This is as per Urban Ministry. Do you see any of these cities being smart cities at all when they cannot ensure basic drainage facilities?
Absolutely. I think, Rajdeep, there's a lot of money that's actually going down the drain, and in the literal sense. We here in Bangalore, are not new to any rains and flooding. We've had this over the past, 5 years, and in the past 2 years, we've had some significant flooding. I think there are solutions for this. I think the lack of proper engineering is where the problem lies. Most of our cities have exploded over the past 15 to 20 years. These 2 decades have seen significant growth. And with that growth, obviously, there are a lot of areas that are being paved off. There are a lot of apartments that are coming in places of villas. And so there's a lot of sheet flow that comes off from all of these areas. Unfortunately, what we've done is we've gone ahead and closed up most of our lakes. We have converted lake beds into layouts. That's a significant problem that we find here in Bangalore. And so there's nowhere for this water to go. Now, I can understand cities like Mumbai, which probably are at sea level, and there are various other challenges. But when it comes to Bangalore, there should be no reason why there should be flooding. Now, the unfortunate part about smart cities is that smart has been kind of defined as, connectivity, internet connectivity, it's everything to do with IT, it's everything to do with AI. But the ground reality is that the ground infrastructure has not kept up with it. We have not updated any of our cities. And, thanks to our forefathers like, M. Vishwesvaraya, Lutyens and others, they planned our cities exceptionally well. So we did inherit cities that were well planned. But in the past 2 to 2.5 decades, when our cities have actually exploded, we have failed to invest in infrastructure. And I think while we have spent a lot of money, budgets have been made, there's been so much of leakage in the system that ground infrastructure just doesn't match up to it. Here in Bangalore, we created something called Tender Sure, Specifications for Urban Road Engineering. And we introduced a complete chapter in there about flood mitigation and water securitization. Now, flood mitigation is something that can be very easily solved if we were to actually do the analysis and create detention facilities. You know, even in Mumbai, if you had detention facilities, it could be lakes, it could be, you know, large underground facilities that are able to take the water during the maximum flood. That's, you know, when during the peak rainfall, you need to be able to trap that water, hold it, and then release it back into the streams and other infrastructure. So I think there's a complete lack of planning. The comprehensive development plan that we actually created in Bangalore is probably just sitting on the shelves. We don't have any GIS mapping of all of our drainage systems and all of our utilities. So this problem is only going to compound itself unless we come up with some kind of a national rejuvenation mission. This is to rebuild India and rebuild India's urban infrastructure. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on. There are solutions. There are umpteen number of solutions.
I'll come to those solutions one by one to each of you. But Jaya, Dhindo, when I look at Delhi in particular, when I look at the figures, it is India's fastest growing city, the entire NCR, Gurugram, Noida, Delhi. And it appears that a city can only take so much. It appears to me, and again, as someone who's observed Delhi, that the city has simply exploded out of control and there is no governance model in place. Do you believe a city like Delhi with NCR exploding on its sides needs a special governance model that will focus on these local issues that many of you have highlighted already?
Absolutely, Rashdeep. I think more than the governance model, right? In the case of Delhi, you know, it's four things coming together. It's ways in which we've built the materiality, where we've built the legacy sort of infrastructure, which is close to like 75, 80 years old and needs upgradation and replacement, and then just general mismanagement of resources, right? So to fix all of that, you definitely need a governance structure which can keep pace with all of this. Also, to give you a figure, over the last couple of decades, 66% of the new growth in Delhi has happened in areas with really high recharge potential. So what that means is you've cut down blue-green infrastructure, which had the natural porosity to kind of absorb some of this water, and you built on top of it. So you've concretized the city. And this is sort of inevitable, right? The other thing is the finances and the kind of money that our urban local bodies have. The urban local body revenues in India are less than 1% of the total GDP, right? Compare that with 6% and 7%, 5% in other developing countries, including Africa, right? And that's the state. And cities are contributing 70% of the GDP, right? So that's how cash and resource strapped our cities are. So given these constraints, it's very hard to think about how can you plan better, how can you manage better, how can you conserve and resource our cities better.
Because Mr. Ghorpade, taking off from that, Mumbai Municipal Corporation is one of the richest civic bodies in the country, but it's been accused in the past of misusing that money. That money is used not for transforming the drainage system of the country, but it lines up the pockets of councillors, or they put it in projects where they get a cut. Is that something that worries you, that the corruption at urban governance is so high that even urban bodies which are cash rich, like the Bombay Municipal Corporation, have been unable to tackle the crisis of drainage? Without getting drainage in place in a city like Mumbai, you're asking for trouble every year.
I think in case of Mumbai, one has to look at it that there are multiple agencies which are involved in providing the basic infrastructure itself. Let's say roads or metros or railways or even the airports, and the way it is being built up, or including the real estate, which is fully driven by the private sector. I think one has to look at it in a holistic way rather than in a isolated way, with saying that whether a corporation or an urban local body is right or wrong, I would put it that way, or being corrupt or non-corrupt. I am looking at from overall city management perspective, that one has to look at it, the aging infrastructure and the expanding areas and the design perspectives, whether the stormwater drains which are being now created, whether you need a bioswales kind of a thing wherein water absorption capacities are much better, or you are looking for a box drain kind of a culture wherein water absorption either on the ground or on the sides is very low. I think it is an overall kind of perspective which needs to be taken rather than saying that this is right and this is wrong and this is what is happening.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't come across something to say, but I would look at it as an urban planner more onto the design perspective.
Yeah, but you see the fact, Mr. Godpade, is every year the BMC carries out the desilting of minor and major nallas along the sort of Mithi river. The civic body allots crores of money. Does it go to where it should go? I'm asking a direct question. Does money which is meant for the purpose which it is allocated for desilting of nallas, ensuring that there is no major waterlogging, does it go into the right causes or not in your view?
Yeah, I am looking at from this angle that whether the capital investment versus the maintenance management, that is what we are looking at. On one hand, desilting is more of a maintenance issue which is going to be continuous, and whereas the filling and the continuous siltation which goes on across Mumbai, if one looks at it, and finally Mithi is one of the 5 rivers wherein you are able to kind of desilt, let the water flow out. I think that is what is required, and the amount of muck which goes in. We have created, kind of systems
but does the money go where it is meant for? Can me as a taxpayer citizen be assured that the money which is allotted for desilting goes there? Or does it line up the pockets of councillors and bureaucrats?
I think in that case, one would look at whether there is a public audit which needs to be carried out, and we go ahead and find out.
Yeah, but that hasn't, you see, that's the problem. There were various recommendations after the 2005 deluge. Many of those recommendations have not been pushed ahead. Let's for a moment come back again to Delhi, Dikshu Kukreja, because in Delhi, there's a blame game again. Like Mumbai, there are multiple authorities. There are certain parts of the city which are under the city government, certain parts which are under the center. You've got the NCR with different governance models. Does that lead to multiplicity of authorities? Could one solution be a single authority which is empowered, possibly independent of daily government interference, which could actually handle this issue of urban planning?
Sure. Most certainly, Rajdeep, I would agree that one of the serious concerns always, which has been pointed out time and again, is the multiplicity of authorities. And in Delhi, vis-a-vis Mumbai, even far multifold, I would say. There are far more authorities and agencies in Delhi. But having said that, I would also give a good example, which is in Delhi, which is, Delhi used to have a similar problem with its urban mobility and transportation. And they formed a singular body called the UTPEC, Unified Transport and Traffic Infrastructure Authority. Similarly, I would recommend that there can be a single agency as far as water management, an integrated water management authority for Delhi, which can take care of all these aspects and is the overarching body which handles these affairs. Water is a critical issue.
Who would they be accountable to? Who would this integrated water management authority be accountable to?
Well, it would be accountable to, of course, finally the citizens, but most importantly, I would say to the state government. But before that, I would say this authority should not be just for Delhi. It should be really for NCR, because the problem is more holistic than just the boundary of Delhi. Like you said, it's also about Noida, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, and other parts of Haryana which fall in. Yamuna River is a big issue here, and how much money has been sunk into the cleaning of the Yamuna River. Similarly, the drains and the aquifer system of Delhi that has been completely messed up with. Vivek was mentioning, the same situation in Delhi with the lakes, which used to be natural water reservoirs for these kind of situations like the monsoons. They have been filled over, there have been buildings made over them, and concretization and rapid urbanization is, of course, another issue. Now, I'm not saying we should not urbanize, but there are sustainable ways of urbanizing. Why do we have to concretize? Have you seen how many trees have fallen just in the last 24 hours? We know how to, it's a simple formula that you need to leave so much area where you don't put concrete so that the roots of the trees are not impacted. So where do we need rocket science for all of this? And I think all these aspects should come under the ambit, at least when it comes to water management and water management related issues, under one single body.
the concretization issue which was just raised, Vivek, it's been a serious issue in your city of Bengaluru in particular. As Bengaluru has exploded, the lakes have shrunk, the water bodies are getting fewer and fewer. We've seen that even in Chennai, the traditional water bodies are getting concretized, construction goes on. Is that the real threat? Because real estate today takes over our cities. Everybody wants a place to stay. And as urban areas expand, you find that the traditional sources of water flow are being plugged in by concretization. Is there a solution out there somewhere?
Absolutely, Rajdeep. I mean, the problem here is that, unfortunately, our urban infrastructure has today got so much of stress on it, right? Because we've not built roads, we have not expanded our cities, we have not gone out into the outskirts and actually built good cities. So the inner core of the city tends to find these kind of problems every year. Now, in terms of a structure, I worked in the US for 3 decades. The FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, actually has flood maps, which means there's an agency that's actually tasked with studying flooding. Now, when you come down to urban local bodies, there are flood control districts. And these districts actually, believe it or not, enforce these norms. They ensure that, areas are not completely concretized. And if you do concretize an area, you have to provide some kind of a flood mitigation strategy, which is creating a detention facility. So in the absence of good planning, we're running into such problems. It's not that we cannot urbanize our cities. It's not.
No, but is it possible now, or is it too late, Vivek? Is it possible now, or has the genie in a way come out of the bottle that it's impossible now to plan, given the way a city like Bengaluru or indeed any of our cities are already completely out of control?
Not really, Rajdeep. See, I mean, today, even if you take the case of Bengaluru, because this is where I've worked for the past almost decade and a half right now, we used to have 480 lakes. We still have 80 lakes. Now, unfortunately, these 80 lakes have not been desilted, which means their capacities have reduced. We have beautiful nalas, as we call them, or rajakaluways, which connect these lakes. So the system actually already exists in place. Now, the question is, are we willing to enhance these systems? Are we willing to actually clean up these systems and do this on a regular maintenance basis so that every year when the flooding comes through, or when the extreme rainfall events, and we have seen that now, most of these systems were designed for 100-year frequency, but now we are seeing 300 and 400-year frequency rainfall, which means the intensity is much higher. But if we do plan for it in advance, and we're able to create these detention facilities, and we're able to actually defilt, we can actually solve this problem. So it's not that we are past it, it's just that we're not playing up, we're not even trying to play catch up with it.
Both you as well as Dikshu offered this possibility of some integrated water management agency. I wonder whether, Jaya, that is a solution, that we need someone who we can hold accountable at times like this rather than the usual blame game. Is an integrated water management agency that then focuses possibly, at least in the first stage, on the 6 major metros of this country, a way forward?
So basically, Rajdeep, we need a systems approach, right? So when it comes to natural resources, they don't follow administrative and political boundaries. Water, air, they don't follow administrative boundaries. So the solutions, we need an integrated urban water management systems approach, yes. So do we need one body? Well, we need cooperation at the regional level, because a lot of these problems are going to be regional in nature and in scale. We need bodies at the local level which are empowered. So it needs to be a 3-tier sort of level of governance, and it can't be just one body that manages. So
where would the system start? When you say integrated water management systems, where do you start? Do you start with drainage? Where do you start?
Yes, so basically when you look at, I'll tell you the example of the city of Bangalore, when you look at the number of authorities who are involved in water management, there are 25 plus authorities, right? They all have different or overlapping mandates. And then there's the issue of basically enforcement and monitoring. So over there, the idea is that can you have a body which is at the regional level, which is at the watershed level, for example, a body which is at the local level, your city authority, and can that vertical sort of coordination between these bodies be made so that, these issues and all of the solutions can come through that channel. So that is what is needed really, is a regional plus a local response. It can't be just one or the other.
Dikshu, in conclusion, what's the one big solution that you have out there, which can be done immediately? Come tomorrow, these images will be all over. These images have been all over for the last 24 hours. Delhi will wake up, and if the weather improves, we'll pretend that this was one bad day. And thereby you tend to forget very quickly the errors of the past. So how do you ensure that people recognize the systemic failures? What's that one thing that needs to be done come tomorrow morning?
Very simple. I would give simple solutions. Each one of us needs to understand that if you want to live in a city, you need to understand that you need to conserve nature as well. I call it organic architecture, and I believe that's the simplest way to go about it. Build, but build besides nature. Don't build at the cost of nature, because nature will come back to you with the kind of images you're showing.
Is it too late though? Is it too late?
Not at all. It's never too late. It's so simple to solve it. We are still a developing nation, remember. We are talking about a Viksit Bharat, but let's do it the sensible way. I don't think it's too late at all. But yes, every year if we keep talking the same thing and do nothing about it, that's unfortunate. I think there are still ways to do it. We still have a population which is growing. We have a population which can still be balanced between urban and rural. So all these are bigger solutions. Of course, I don't want to get into that discussion right now. But no, it's not too late. We just need to have an attitudinal shift. Somebody mentioned here, Rajdeep, about good urban planning. What do we define as good urban planning? First of all, let's start looking at how professionals are selected for these kind of projects. How can a city or a country which is talking about world-class infrastructure build it? By giving L1, selecting consultants on the lowest fee basis. Where does the technical expertise go out of the window? So these basic aspects need to be looked at. I think the solutions will follow automatically.
Let's leave it there. It's wonderful to have those who've worked in the field to explain what they believe are solutions for the future. I'm going to leave you, thank you, and then leave our viewers with all those images from across the national capital. Remember, we talk, as was just suggested, about a Viksit Bharat. We talk about 2047, how we're going to transform this nation. We've got to start it with our cities, because more and more Indians are migrating to the cities. There will be greater and greater pressure on infrastructure. The images that we've seen today should shock us and force us to change. Think about it. Stay well, stay safe. Jai Hind, Namaskar.